Okay, so part two of chapter 13 is much shorter. It's just talking about the immune system and the fact that we have several barriers to infections. One is our skin, one is our intestinal cells because the mucus that we have that kind of washes things through, and also because of the pH in our stomach that can kill a lot of bacteria. Then we create the white blood cells in our bone marrow, and that is obviously a way. There's several different types of white blood cells that can attack bacteria. And then we have lymphoid tissue, which is a part of the lymph system, which carries bacteria away and out of our blood and away from our bodies. And so all these work together to prevent infection. Also, to take away any damaged cells. So cells obviously are going to grow and die, and they have to be removed. So the immune system is going to be either innate, that is, that we have an intestinal barrier from our, like I just mentioned, in the skin, and then we have specific, that's non-specific, specific. So we actually make antibodies specific to the antigens that have been introduced to us so that we can identify them, recognize them. You actually form receptors that recognize certain viruses or bacteria so if you are subjected to them again, you recognize them and your body goes into the attack mode. And the third system we have is the inflammation, which is good and bad. Inflammation is good because the cytokines are released, and these can attack and prevent white blood cell or infections from making a home in your body. So they actually help wash them away. You can have what's chronic inflammation. So by having a poor diet, not having all the essential nutrients, that would lead to like heart disease or arthritis. So we don't want excessive inflammation or even having too much stress. The cytokine release continually releasing. But in general, we do want the inflammation because it helps. That's what happens when you have fevers or when you have an injury and you see that your body inflames and you have bruises and so forth. That's actually a system of repairing the damage from the bacteria. So the white blood cells are active all throughout your body, and we need to make sure we have healthy white blood cells. So what are the nutrients that support the immune system? And I think we saw already the picture in the previous slide talked about, the previous section, sorry, it talked about vitamin A and zinc. So we went through this part in part one, the erythrocytes and these nutrients, but now for the white blood cells that are produced also in the bone marrow, it's vitamin A and zinc are the main two nutrients we talk about here. And this just shows the different types of white blood cells. So where we just had the erythrocytes as the red blood cell, here there's a lot of different types of white blood cells that have different functions. So the leukocyte, for instance, is the main white blood cell, the name for the whole, all of these together. But the types of them are neutrophil, so the white blood cell that fights infections, a lymphocyte, which regulates antibody production, so you create antibodies. The monocytes, which are like phagocytes that actually attack and eat and digest a bacteria that's not foreign, that's foreign to the body. There's eosinophils, which are also phagocytic. They actually incorporate, but especially for allergic reactions. There's basophils, which are what lead to inflammation. And then there's the other parts of your blood, which are platelets and plasma. They're not part of the white blood cells. So there's several different types of white blood cells, and if you look at how they work, the phagocytic cells are the ones that actually ingest, they have acids and enzymes inside the cell, which can digest bacteria and so forth, so that it is destroyed. So these need zinc. That's the main thing we're going to talk about. Also, copper and vitamin D are essential for bacteria destruction. So there's we have the skin that's going to help if we want good skin health, so that it can not break down. People have cellulitis, going to get infections in their skin. You want the white blood cells to be healthy. You want there's other enzymes that are needed for, like, for instance, the breaking down bacteria that are needed. Certain minerals are needed for that. In order to make white blood cells, we need protein, vitamin A, and zinc, as we mentioned, as well as the B vitamins. And so we have the mucus formation, we have epithelial cell health, that's our skin, and then we have the T cell activity, which is the antibodies that protect against bacteria. Vitamin D is a kind of a new thing. That's also a new vitamin they're recommending that make sure we have plenty because it might reduce autoimmune diseases, which often suppress white blood cell formation. So people with HIV or people with arthritis, they don't have, or even gluten intolerance, we're not able to fight off with our white blood cells because they're not adequate. And then we're getting plenty of antioxidants we talked about in chapter 10 that will keep our white blood cells healthy. So we need these nutrients. So that is quite a pile of nutrients that we need to maintain health and wellness. So vitamin A then and D help regulate gene expression. So these forms of can actually switch genes on and off. That might be what's causing some of our autoimmune diseases if we don't have adequate levels of these. So that's a kind of genetic control over our immune system. These can be changed by these gene expressions can be changed. We're discovering after birth. It's something we aren't set with a certain genes, but by environment, by stress, by lack of nutrients, we can actually have new disease formations throughout our life. So vitamin A is the main vitamin we're going to talk about with cell replication and also for skin health. So we need to get enough vitamin A. Remember, vitamin A it's also called preformed vitamin A. So you can get provitamin A and beta carotene. So in carrots and sweet potatoes, that will turn into vitamin A, but it's not actually vitamin A. So preformed vitamin A is the actual vitamin A, which is a fat soluble vitamin, which is in a lot of animal products, things with fat like butter, fish oils, eggs, and also the amount we need varies. So males need more than females, and it is stored in our liver because it is fat soluble. So some of the foods here we like beef liver, sweet potatoes, greens, spinach, a lot of vegetables, as well as the dairy products. And you don't want too much vitamin A because, especially pregnant women, it can cause abortions and malformations in the baby. So that's careful. But even if you aren't pregnant, taking too much vitamin A can cause liver toxicity and fractures. So they don't recommend you take vitamin A in a supplement, or if you do, don't get more than 100%. Don't go over 100% of the daily value because of toxicity. And then zinc is the other mineral now for immune function for synthesis of white blood cells. And that's kind of interesting because if you don't get enough zinc, it actually causes stunting of growth. Here's a 16-year-old boy. It can also cause immature sex organ production, so you may not be able to conceive if you don't have enough zinc in your body. And where is zinc from? It's mainly in animal products. So you see beef, oysters, lamb, ham, but it's also in dairy products and some nuts. And wheat germ. Wheat germ is an interesting. Wheat germ is that part of the wheat kernel that has a lot of vitamins, minerals, protein, and fat. So that's the zinc, and too much zinc is also not recommended because zinc and copper have a similar mechanisms of absorption. So if you take too much of one, you can lead to a deficiency of the other. So that's something to be, if you're taking supplements, to be aware of. So these are all the roles in immunity, all the nutrient roles. Vitamin A we talked about. Vitamin C we talked about another chapter, the antioxidant, so it protects cells from breaking down. Vitamin E we talked about the antioxidant. So all the antioxidants are kind of in this pile too because of the way they strengthen white blood cells. Zinc because it also is a formation of the white blood cells. Iron and copper have a small amount of small function as well. But if you could just remember vitamin A and zinc, and then the antioxidants, that would be sufficient. The last part of this chapter is just talking about probiotics and the importance of having a healthy gut microbiota. So these are the living organisms we talked about in chapter 4 that live in our colon. These produce vitamin K. They produce short chain fatty acids for energy. So they produce food for themselves so they can live healthily. A lot of these are healthy bacteria. If you take a sample of your bowels, you might find you have unhealthy bacteria. So you want to make sure that this bacteria is strong enough to be able to fight off pathogens. It's very essential. And in babies especially, babies get very sick with colon infections if they don't have proper bacteria. So here the stomach you can actually look at the amount of probiotics. The large intestine, the stomach have a certain amount of bacteria. Here they have, I can't even read that, like 100 billion or something, a different colon bacteria, different types of bacteria that live in your large intestine. So the immune function then is that probiotics reinforce the GI tract. I think of it as like a fighting, having a phalange, um, a straight line of shields so you can prevent pathogens from absorbing into your blood system. So you need to have a lot of microbiota to prevent things like Crohn's disease, inflammatory bowel disease. So sometimes some people take probiotic pills, or you can take foods that actually feed the probiotics in your system. So natural sources of prebiotics, which are food for probiotics, are helpful. So eating these types of foods, these carbohydrates, are food for that. That's something you can consider. And then these are really healthy foods. So fructooligosaccharides, what is that? These are short chain carbohydrates which are used and are found in the food list we just talked about. They're found in asparagus, leeks, things that are kind of gummy. You think about when you cut an onion, it has kind of this mucousy thin, and bananas. That's an oligosaccharide, which is helpful for your gut. And then also symbiotics, so other foods and supplements that contain probiotics, like yogurt has a probiotics in it, or you can take the pills. And some fermented foods, a small amount of pickles or sauerkraut are also helpful for your GI system. So that is some of the review for the immune system, just making sure that you keep healthy a healthy system so that you have specific, non-specific, and specific adaptations to bacteria, and also that you don't produce too many cytokines because of stress, and so that you can contain and have an adequate number of white blood cells. Okay, well, with that, I hope that's a little bit of a review, and that completes chapter 13. Thank you.